You have people there praising this socialist lunatic. And again, I don't think they know that he caved. So he's also a socialist lunatic, just to be clear. Let's get to this man, because people are talking about this, and Donald Trump is pretty careful in who he chooses to stare down. You notice that? Pretty careful in who he chooses to posture with. Hey, when it comes to dealing with communists and Marxists and people who are against everything the United States is meant to stand for, I'm okay with it. And that would, of course, include the man of the hour, Mr. President Gustavo Petro, which brings us to this week's What a Piece of Shit.
It looks pretty gay
flag?
there.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Colombia!
Yay! I love how the left, they argue, like, it shouldn't be Colombia, it's C-O-L-O-M. Americans are so arrogant to respell it. There was a comedian who used to do that bit, like, we changed Spain to España. I go, oh yeah, America's the only one. Do you know what we call the United States in French Canada? États-Unis. It's called using your language.
Also, I don't care.
I don't care, but
I could care very little about that.
But leftists want to let you know that they're very world traveled. Like, well, I one time spent time in Colombia.
Oh,
I just shut up.
Good. Thank you.
I say it like they said, Colombia. So.
Yes, exactly.
The snort is necessary.
Let's go to President Petro, this guy, trying to criticize the United States. Okay, here's who he is. He's a leftist, right? He's an unbelievable leftist. He's president of Colombia, you know that. He's a member of the leftist Colombia Humana. He was elected in 2022, about 50% of the vote. Okay, let me give you this. He's a socialist. He's a Marxist. We're going to give you a lot of references today because it's important to understand who we should, who we should be art of the dealing. Okay, socialist policies to start with. He wants socialization of healthcare. That's what he supports. He stopped new permits for oil exploration and drilling. He established a progressive wealth tax with starting, I think, with anything over $600,000. He established a citizens rent program where he gives like a monthly salary to vulnerable families, which I would imagine is almost everyone in Colombia, unless you're dealing coke. It's a form of UBI. Here's who he was. This man is an actual criminal. Okay, he was a criminal and he spent time in jail. He was a member of the Marxist guerrilla militia group M19, 18 months in prison for weapons possessions, which of course means that's what they could catch him on. These folks were not, we haven't hit one. What a piece of shit. Okay? M19, this is the kind of stuff they would do. Communists, right? You would think communists, let's share. Yeah. Kidnapping, political assassinations, and working as hired guns for Pablo Escobar's Medellin cartel. What pieces of shit.
How dare you? It's Medellin.
Medellin. I don't care. I say it the American way. And at his inauguration, President Petro actually received, for those of you who watch Narcos, the sword of Simon Bolivar.
To be here, together with his sword,
nutcrackers?
it's a lifetime for me. This sword represents too much for us.
Now bring out the giant rats and the dance. Where is Macaulay Culkin? We don't have him on retainer?
No.
Shoot. By the way, M19 stole that sword in 1974.
Wow.
So he's advertising, hey, communist militia group. Isn't that great? Out in the open. This is a man, and they never get called on these things. I don't know that I've ever loved anything as much as this guy loves praising communist dictators. So Hugo Chavez, Petro was actually one of Chavez's closest advisors outside of Sean Penn. And he went to Chavez's funeral. You know, the man who plunged Venezuela into abject poverty and people were starving in the streets and, of course, paved the way for his successor, Maduro. In a country that is actually incredibly oil rich and still unbelievably poor, it's almost a miracle to make that happen. Yeah, that Chavez.
Even the Middle East is like, what are you doing?
Yes, what? Hey, you are not letting ladies run your country, are you? There it is. So when Chavez died, Petro posted this on X. He said, "You lived in the times of Chavez and perhaps you thought he was a clown. You were mistaken. You lived in the times of a great Latin American leader. Send in the clowns." What a piece of shit. Just to be clear. I muted my whole thing, so I said, what a piece of it. Yeah, all right. And you would think maybe he learned his lesson, considering the violations of human rights, right, that happened with Chavez, where people had a little bit of egg on their face. But then in 2022, he actually reestablished diplomatic ties with Venezuela and Maduro, getting quite cozy with this guy as well. It's almost like he just can't stop screwing up. Here's actually the photo op that was used.
Oh, geez.
This short little fella.
Maduro's a tank.
You were supposed to give me an apple box.
What, are they playing a dirge? Jeez.
So we got Chavez, Maduro. Okay, sometimes you make mistakes. Let's go to Castro.
Oh, come on.
Petro praised the Castro regime, again, a country of complete and total poverty and no basic human rights, during a Twitter beef with the previous president of Colombia. So he wanted to differentiate himself from the previous president of Colombia by letting know that he supports and stands with self-avowed communists. He wrote, "The Castros made sure that the children had food, health, and education, but you, Duque, bombed them." The only problem there is that people in Cuba don't have food, health, or education.
Right.
Despite what Michael Moore tells you. Ever wonder why Cuban Americans are the single most solid Republican voting bloc in this country? It's not even close. The people who experienced communism and fled it, one of the few groups who have a legitimate claim to actual asylum in the United States. This guy thinks that Castro's got it right, which means he wants to do it like the Castros in Colombia. You thought that if the children died, communism would die. Well, they died because of communism.
They starved.
You thought so much stupidity. What a piece of shit. Think about this. People were dying in Cuba because of communism. And I get it, the left will blame the United States. Cuba is a microclimate where everything grows. And they have the support of China and, well, at one point, the USSR. The two
Still do.
biggest trading partners that you could, hey, they don't need the United States at all. Wait a second. You mean President Petro is blaming us for sending back their own people, and people like him blame the United States for communism failing in Cuba, and they blame the United States for communism failing in Venezuela? Hold on a second. Is communism ever responsible for the failure of communism? Can you point me to one example where they admit this? Because this guy's a communist, President Petro. Just to be clear. So when you read on again, Reddit politics is very valuable because they censor any conservative viewpoints, and it's a massive site. You see the algorithms, you see what people are commenting on. You have people there praising this socialist lunatic. And again, I don't think they know that he caved. So he's also a socialist lunatic pussy, just to be clear. And you see this quite a bit. Communism just becomes more and more irrelevant. The only relevance that communism or Marxism or socialism has is when brought up by privileged Americans who have the luxury of never having experienced it. Otherwise, it never works. It's less and less and less relevant. Pretty much every place that has tried it has either descended into total poverty and irrelevancy or abandoned it and sort of saved face a little bit. There is no door number 3. When people complain out there, Donald Trump is going to alienate us from our allies, hold on a second. Why in the hell should a guy like this be considered an ally? No. Look, this is my perspective. You can comment below. The United States has plenty of friends. We could use a few enemies, and I think that socialists, Marxists, and guerrilla terrorists should be on that list. That's been this week's installment of What a Piece of Shit. Hey, if you like this video, or if you have strong opinions, comment below, where I will tell you this, the comment section on YouTube is the best that society has to offer. You won't regret it one bit. Or you can click one of these videos playing right here next to me in that box. No, not that one. That's embarrassing.